Hey everybody, it's Nathaniel, Avila reporting from Greater Orlando, and I'm here with Timbrel, Hildebrand reporting from Crowley, Texas, and today we're going to be talking about the black hole. Ooh, what did you think about this film, Timbrel?
Overall, I wasn't super crazy about it. I'll be honest, but I think it had some good. I think it is still an interesting movie, nevertheless.
It's definitely interesting, yeah. So, some backstory about this film is that a lot of people believe that it it was Disney's response to Star Wars. Uh, but that is not true. That is just a myth. But it really was based off of like it was supposed to be based off of like the success of disaster films in the early 1970s, like The Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno. So, two screenwriters named Bob Barbash and Richard Landau approached Disney Studios executive story editor Frank Paris with an idea for a space themed disaster film originally titled Space Station One. Though I did see that it was also called Space Probe One, so it could either be one of those two. So the uh, so the writers showed Paris like a sketch of their idea, and their idea was later pitched to Ron Miller, who was a studio producer, and uh, and he got another producer named Winston Hilbert to help develop the project. So with Hilbert, he came up with the idea of the black hole to be featured within the story. So after like a year of working on the project, Hibbler did he wasn't really into the with the later story drafts, so he got another guy named William Wood to rewrite the script. Uh, but then he ended up retiring. Hilbert ended up retiring from Disney, and then it was shelved. And then it wasn't brought up again until 1975, uh, when it was retitled. Oh, here it is. And then it was retitled to Space Probe One. And then the year after that, in 1976, Hibbler came out of retirement to work on the film, and then suggested to Miller to hire a concept artist named Robert McCall to create some pre-production visuals to help focus up the story and explore some possible ideas for the script. He also brought in a matte designer named Peter Ellenshaw. He got him out of retirement to create like some conceptual designs for the film. 4 months after that, they got director John Hugh, who recently made Escape to Witch Mountain in 1975. He was assigned to direct the film. He liked the premise of it, but he thought that the script needed more revisioning. So we got another guy named Sumner Arthur Long to rewrite it some more. So by summer of 1976, the production team was still not satisfied with the script. So the audience's interest in like disaster genre was starting to die out. So in August of that year, Hibbler ended up passing away. But a lot of the work was already like a whole bunch of work was already invested on the project, so they couldn't just leave it be. So Miller took over the project, and then in October, Ed Coffey was brought in to rewrite the script some more, and then by February of 1977, another person named Jeb Rosenbrook was brought on to restructure the story again, in which the script was then changed to focus on a small core group of astronauts who would encounter a black hole, which was a phenomenon that has been growing like in the discussion of the scientific community at that time. So yeah, that's where that came from. So the script was being rewritten. Hugh left the project so he can direct Brass Target. And then in December of 1977, Miller got Gary Nelson, who had just been nominated for an Emmy for his political series Washington, to direct the film. After reading the draft, Nelson initially he turned down the offer, but he was then called back to the studio after observing like miniatures and matte paintings that Ellenshaw made, and then he finally agreed to direct the film. So Rosebrook finally finished the final draft in March of 1978, but Disney still did not like the script. Another guy named Gary Day was brought on to do some more script doctoring. Uh, after some scientific research was made, uh, a guy named and they brought on this other guy named Martin Rabanovich to like be like a like to research the whole space and the black hole thing. And the title "The Black Hole" was finally selected to convey the power and the mystique of the film. Ooh, and that's the story of the black hole.
Wow.
Yep, there sure was a lot of rewrites.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so did you think like the rewrites was very evident in the film?
I mean, I guess, but honestly, I wasn't very blown away with the story itself. So, regardless of how many rewrites it went through, I think it probably could have used some more work.
It probably should have been some more rewrites.
Yeah, I think the concept was interesting, but the characters left something to be desired in regard to development.
That's very true. Um, like the concept was there, but they did really need to polish up the characters, and they kind of did this Disney like thing by having like a goofy sidekick character, which was the Vincent the robot. What did we think
Honestly, the
about it?
robot was my favorite character. It had the most character.
Yeah, that's so very true. And then there was also Bob, who was played by what's his name, Slim Pickings.
Huh.
Yeah, he was the other robot, like the older version of it.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and so how did those two characters play in the film?
Honestly, I felt like those two robots, Bob and Vincent, had more. I don't know what to say. I feel like they had more meat in regard to character than any of the human characters. So, like, they were the only ones that made me feel for them, really. Like, nobody else really made me feel for them, honestly, as characters.
I definitely agree with that because I noticed that a lot of the characters are very one note and one dimensional.
Yeah.
And I think one of them ends up dying. I forgot his name. Was
Two
it?
of them do.
Was all of them die?
No, two of them died.
Oh, okay. Who was the person that was killed by Maximilian?
That was Alex. He was the one that wanted to stay on the ship with the crazy dude.
Oh yeah. So Alex got killed, and then we were like, "Oh no, he's dead." And then we just move on.
Yeah.
And also like it was like this is when the trailer came out for this film. It was actually the very first time they spoiled a major plot point in the trailer because in the trailer there's a like a shot of Alex getting killed by Maximilian. So
Hmm.
and there's also who was the oh and then there's Dr. Kate. What do we think about Dr. Kate?
I mean, I can't really think that much more about her than any of the other characters. She didn't really have much in regard to development. She kind of was just she was the staple girl on board. It was kind of interesting, I thought, how she had sort of like this ESP with the robot, but they never really explained why. So that was a little weird. And I mean, the only thing that made her kind of interesting was the fact that her father had been on the ship that they discovered.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Her father was on the ship. I think it was later revealed that Reinhardt, the villain of the film, and it killed him or something.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I kind of forgot about that later on.
yeah.
Which brings
He
on.
killed him.
Oh, okay. He didn't make him into one of those zombie robot things.
No, he just killed him.
Okay. So, what do we think about Reinhardt, the villain?
Honestly, out of all the human characters, he was probably the. I guess I'd put he's the least boring out of all of them. He was more dynamic to watch. I guess maybe the actor was just a little bit more talented than the other actors on screen. But again, like I think that just because his drives were a little more clear were what made him a more compelling character because he was kind of like he was kind of the staple mad scientist, too married to his work. It's going to cause him to do crazy things. So, I mean, I felt like he was a fairly compelling character and villain, but only because only because his drive was clear, which wasn't really evident in any of the other characters.
Yeah, he did have a very clear goal, which was he wanted to explore the black hole. Which goes into like this theme of the film, which is the uh, horrors of exploration. What did you think that means?
I'm sorry?
Like, what did you think about like the film's theme of the human's drive to explore no matter what, like the how dangerous it is.
I guess it works. Again, I didn't feel like any theme was very prevalent throughout the movie, just because the story felt a little lacking. But I mean, I guess it makes sense. It shows that since he was blinded by his own ambition. And that's a common theme in many films. So I mean, I guess it works.
Yeah, I'm very much grasping at straws. I'm probably giving the film way too much credit, but which brings us to like the ending of the film. The ending is probably the most interesting part of the film, uh, mainly because it looks like they kind of wanted like a 2001 style ending. What did you think it means?
I mean, from my perspective, it kind of looked like they were going for a heaven and hell kind of thing. Like the bad guy ended up in this place full of fire and like ghoulish looking people, and then the protagonists were flying toward a bright light. It felt very 70s, for lack of a better word. It was kind of weird and sort of out of the blue, but I think that's what they were trying to get at there.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people debating on what it means and everything. But the one that I most subscribe to is probably definitely the heaven and hell thing. Uh, what did you? There was also that one scene where Reinhardt and Maximilian merge. I guess. What
Yeah.
what does that mean?
I guess the idea is like the black hole was causing, because like it was supposed to be outside of time and space as we know it. So I guess the idea was that like the laws of nature don't necessarily apply. So Reinhardt ended up merging with this awful beast he had created, I suppose. Like he was being entrapped within his own creation, something like that maybe.
Yeah, that's probably it. And there was also like a comic book that was supposed to come out called Beyond the Black Hole, which is supposed to take place after the events of this film. Uh, about like the crew of the was it the Palmito?
Palmito or something.
Yeah, the Palmito. The crew of the Palmito uh, going and exploring what's beyond the black hole, but it never came out, so I guess we'll never know. Uh, and there was also like there were some scenes that were kind of like the fight scenes uh were kind of silly also, especially with what's his name, Vincent, whenever he would like I guess hit like the evil robot android sentinel sentry type robots, but it would always look like he just like would just tap them a little bit, like a soft tap with his little crowbar arm, would just tap them and then they would just fall over like he just like got punched, sucker punched in the face. It was like,
See, that
oh,
didn't bother me
oh.
so much.
I just kind of thought it was kind of silly. Um,
Yeah.
there was
I
also
mean, that's the one thing that I think the movie does have going for it. Its use of visual effects, practical and animated and otherwise, I think is very stunning. Like the black hole looks really cool. The ships look incredible, probably on par with Star Wars and Star Trek. And especially, I felt like the robots and the like, just I suppose the world building itself is really cool to look at. Like I think this film is worth watching just for kind of the grandness of it, the gigantic sets and the massive and the robots and stuff.
yeah, like there's like this kind of like thing that Disney does do very good is like they do good visual wise. Uh, what they lack in storytelling, they do make up for production design and set
Well, I don't know if
construction.
it makes up for it, but it's good. I'll give it that.
Yeah. There was also like I guess like a hint of a romance between Kate and I want to say Charles. like very briefly.
Wait, you mean the captain?
I think.
Because Charlie was the other dude. Charlie was the young blonde guy.
Maybe I was thinking about Dan. Dan's the captain.
Dan, yeah, Dan. It was Dan.
Okay,
Yeah,
Dan.
it wasn't very defined. They held hands and kind of shared a glance, a couple of shoulder touches.
Yeah, it's like, oh snap! This is we're Disney. We gotta like tone it down a bit for the
I
kids.
don't know.
So I mean, this film is very kind of like bare bones. There's really not a bunch to talk about in this film. It's really like the characters were pretty one dimensional, and the story was pretty like, we kind of get where it was going. Uh, so do you have anything else to add about this particular film?
I mean, I guess I would say that The Black Hole is a very visually stunning film with an interesting concept that was poorly executed.
Oh yeah.
Like, even the plot itself, I didn't have a problem with. It just felt like we had a plot, but there wasn't anything filling up the plot. They were just moving from point A to point B. And if we had more meat in between each point, in developing characters and relationships and stuff like that, then this movie could have been a lot more interesting.
Yeah. So what aspects of the film would you suggest to improve and to improve the overall film?
Really, it's just the characters. The characters, like, you don't really. Well, first off, the actors weren't particularly compelling, but that's not necessarily their fault. They could have been directed poorly,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't given much to work with. So I feel like if they had spent more time developing the characters, making them more likable, revealing to us what their drive is, rather than just kind of making them cookie cutter protagonists in spacesuits, then maybe we would have liked them a little bit more. Because you could kind of pick up on small little bits of character in each of them. Like, you could tell that Charlie was the hot shot, Dan was the rock of the group. Okay, Kate literally had no character. I'm sorry, she had almost nothing. And and then you had the coward, who was the old guy who ran away, and then you had Alex, who is also somewhat blinded by Rindals, or what's his name?
Reinhardt.
Yeah, my bad. His sort of like ambition. So you had like these sort of like tiny little pieces of character that were revealed in each of these people, but they weren't really expounded upon. And maybe that's the problem. Like, maybe the problem was there were too many characters. But yeah, I think that's just the problem. They had these kind of like archetypal characters that they didn't make interesting, really.
Yeah. So if they would go back and rewrite it again, we would probably tell them to flesh out the characters a whole lot more.
For
Uh,
sure.
yeah, like with Kate, they're like, what's her personality? And they're like, well, she has ESP. And then there's like, oh, just fine, it's enough. Let's do
Yeah.
it. And then so so we only got that. So, and like, especially with all these rewrites that it went through, you would think that they would would focus on the characters a bit more, or at least improve on it.
Well, honestly, it might be because of the rewrites that they weren't able to kind of like. Because if you hack and hack and hack so much of the script, eventually you might lose the heart of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true too. What did we think about the Bob's death in this film?
Honestly, it was the only thing that moved me throughout the entire film, really.
Really? Like, why do
Like,
you?
I cared more about that robot getting blown up than Alex getting, like, blendered by Maximus.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true. Like, that's the only part that I actually felt any bit of emotion at all.
And it really wasn't much, still. Like, it was just a little bit for me.
Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much it. So, uh, when the crew of the Palmito meet the, what is it, the Cyprus or something like that, the uh Reinhardt ship.
They called, I thought it was the sickness.
Cygnus, yeah, that's right. The Cygnus.
Yeah.
when they meet the Cygnus, they just kind of go in and they just kind of meander around, and they're like, "Wow, look,
Yeah.
it's a black hole. That's cool." And then that's that. And and then they're like, "Oh wow, look at that! It's robots. They're actually humans." Shock horror. Am I right?
I guess.
Yeah. So, what did we think about the whole idea of uh, the robots ended up being like the human crew?
Oh, I thought that was a nice twist. See, that was a nice twist. I mean, I think this plot in itself is pretty good. It's just its execution wasn't particularly inspiring.
Yeah. So that's the black hole for you. Any final thoughts on it?
Not really. I mean, I still think it's worth checking out just for the visual stuff, but it's definitely not the best thing that's come out of Disney.
Yeah. So would you recommend somebody watch it for just for the visuals at least?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't even recommend it for the visuals. I mean, I'd tell them to flip through it maybe just to look at it, not
Okay.
necessarily watch the movie.
Okay. Just like look at it like on mute and just like scroll through it.
Maybe I don't know.
Okay. I would give this film a 4 out of 10. What would you give it?
Yeah, I'd give it 5.
5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd
That's
give
very
it 5.
generous. It's very generous of you.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the black hole for you. This one's a little bit more of a shorter podcast, but I mean, come on, if you've seen it, you would know that there's not that much to talk about. All right, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Uh,